Hey guys, I want to talk about something that has plagued the Christian community for a long time. And it revolves around this. A lot of times when you read Christian articles, periodically there will be a story that is trying to critique how we deliver the gospel message, particularly about judgment. And oftentimes they will advocate a softer, friendlier approach. And so what happens is that in this advocating for a softer, friendlier approach, things like judgment and hell are assigned as traumas, right? And so one specific art thing that happened like this, somebody posted an article on Facebook the other day. I saw it. And then all the responses were talking about all the trauma that they had about hell and how that was negative and how we should think about how age appropriate that is and etc. Right. And my big takeaway was not even a critique of the gospel message, because here's the thing. You can always get better. But the truth of the matter is that the people who really think like that ought to just be honest with themselves and leave the church. I know that sounds shocking that I say that, especially as somebody who loves the Lord the way that I do. But here's the thing. If you had a fireman who went into a house to rescue people from a burning building, and he said, get the F out of that house, right? And he went in there and rescued some people. We wouldn't criticize him for cussing at the people because the weight of what he was doing was so important. Wouldn't matter if he rescued a family 5 or he rescued just 3 out of the 5. If his duty that he was doing was so heavy, it would outweigh the delivery of the message. Now, when you talk about eternity, right? And let's just take away from let's just pretend that your opinion really matters, because it really don't. But let's just pretend that it matters and your opinion affects reality. If your opinion is that Christianity is not true, then guess what? You're going to naturally critique the message because you think to yourself that, hey, these people over here, they talking about something I really don't care about. The least they can do is be nice about it, right? So that will be your approach, and you will critique how nice they are in delivering it. So that will be your main focus. But if you accept the truth that eternity is real, if you accept the truth that God does judge the world, then the delivery of the message is not as important as the content of the message. And therein lies the issue, right? All these issues, people critiquing how judgment is talked about and the trauma from hell, what they really are is just fake Christians who are not honest enough to just leave us alone, leave us true people alone so we could get about our business and stop wasting our time talking to you. Because oftentimes what happens is this. We sit there and we talk about a message of judgment. Somebody over there gets offended. The only reason you're going to get offended is because you don't take the judgment as real. Well, if you don't take the judgment as real, you're not a Christian. If you ain't a Christian, please leave and stop wasting my time. Stop taking up the pews of the church. Stop asking for stuff, because everything you're asking for is disingenuous because you don't believe already. All the people that you will hear questioning things like that, oftentimes they are falling into 2 categories. The first category is people who don't truly believe, right? They want a softer, gentler approach because they don't believe anyway, so they would rather receive it in a pleasant way. The second type of person actually does believe, but they know people who don't believe, and rather than blame them for rejecting the message, they blame the messenger for how it was delivered. Forget the fact that that person has heard 50 million kinds of messages and has probably heard it in 50 million kind of ways. They will blame the one time that it was delivered in a way that they didn't like it for the person's disbelief, rather than put the responsibility where it lies, on the listener. Let's be real clear. Christianity is not rare. The message of Christianity is not rare. I know that it could be rare in how well it's delivered. And I know some people deliver it better than others. But the truth of the matter is that when people reject the message, they're rejecting it because of the content, not because of how it's packaged. And when they're rejecting what's inside the gospel message, they are rejecting the truth, and they are not part of the church. So when you cater to those people, what you really are doing is you're catering to people who really don't have any real investment in what you're doing. And you are going away from the people that truly do believe the message. Because here's the point. If hell is traumatic to you, it should be. because hell is meant to be scary. Some people say, well, you shouldn't scare people into heaven. Well, yes, you should. The same way you should be scared out of eating a whole bunch of sugar so you don't get diabetes. The same way a fat person should be scared to exercise so they don't get a heart attack. We scare people all the time when we believe that the consequences are true. Don't translate your lack of believing in the consequences to I'm giving a bad message, because that's a false equivalency. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're trying to look and go by the conclusion that you already believe what I'm saying is false, and therefore transfer that to how I should deliver the message to you. Right? That's disingenuous. So, hey, the message of judgment is so needed because it's so stark. That's literally the reason why we preach. If God's wrath wasn't real, if God wasn't throwing people into hell, then we wouldn't need Jesus. So the Joel Osteens of the world and the positive preachers of the world, they are preaching a false doctrine. Another way of putting it is, you don't need Superman if Lois Lane didn't fall from a 50-story building. You don't need Jesus if there is no judgment. And that's why judgment got to be talked about. Or I'll put it another way. The Bible talks about all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. In other words, everybody is going to fall under judgment. The default is judgment. Love is rare. So when you talk about the love of God don't even apply to everybody. Let's just be blunt. The love of God does not apply equally to everybody. But the wrath of God applies to all without exception. And so if you really want to understand the gospel message, you got to understand the fact that God is angry with sin. And if you don't understand that, everything else falls to pieces.